Welcome back everybody to linuxacademy.com. My name is Terry, and in today's video we continue our preparation for the Linux Foundation Certified System Administration exam. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at a couple of the basics in how we would create and edit text files on the command line. Most of you that have used Linux before can use any number of the GUI text editors as well as word processors, but we're going to concentrate on what we would do on the command line to edit and create our text files. So the first thing that we can do is we can create a blank text file where none exists. So let's take a look at our directory. We're in a directory called test. And if we do an ls-al, and directory manipulation is something that if you're not familiar with, there are videos on the Linux Academy site to talk about in general. So we're simply listing the directories that are contained within the test directory. And in this case, there's only two directories. One, the dot directory, meaning the immediately above parent directory, and the dot directory, which is our current directory. There's no other files or directories where we are in the test system. So let's go ahead and clear our screen. And if we want to create a blank file that we can use for editing later, containing absolutely nothing in it, there's a couple of ways we can do it using a couple of simple command line tools. So if we want to use the touch command, and if we take a look at the man page for the touch command, it tells you that the touch command changes file timestamps. But it will also create a file if it doesn't exist. Now, you can change that so that it only changes the access time, it adds a date, it doesn't create a file, etc. But in our case, we're going to actually use it to create a file. So if we do touch mytest.txt, and that's all there is to it, when we do the ls-al command again, we should see a 0 byte, which we do right here, mytest.txt file. Now we could have easily used the echo command to create a text file that we could edit later as well. So the echo command literally echoes whatever comes after it to the terminal by default. So for example, if we type echo hello, then it will echo the word hello to our terminal. But using something called redirection, we can simply create a blank file, and you'll see if we just do echo, quote, quote, it echoes a blank to our terminal. We can do that same thing, redirecting that output instead of from the terminal, we're going to redirect it to mytest2.txt. And now when I do an ls-al, I should see two files, mytest.txt and mytest2.txt. And what's interesting about the second one is because we echoed out a blank, it actually does write a single character to the mytest2.txt. But if we look at it, and we can look at the contents of a file that we've created, let's go ahead and clear our screen, by using something called cat, which stands for concatenate, and by default it will concatenate those contents to the screen. So if we look at mytest.txt, we see that there's absolutely nothing. But if we cat mytest2.txt, we'll see that there's a blank line, and that blank line is what we echoed out from our command to the actual file itself. Now we can also edit, quote unquote, or at least append or add content to an existing file by, again, using the echo command to append information to an existing file. We can do that, for example, to the mytest.txt by saying echo, and then we can say myline mytest.txt. And what's different about this redirect is that we're using the double redirect pipe, and that means append to whatever happens to be on the right hand side. So in this case, we're not going to create a new file called mytest.txt. We're going to append whatever's contained in quotes from here into mytest.txt. So now that I've done that, if I use my cat command and I do mytest.txt, then I'll see my line. And in fact, I can repeat that as many times as I want, and it will simply concatenate or add to the end additional lines every time I run that command. So we'll add my line 2 and 3, and we'll see that my test text now contains those 3 lines, my line 2, my line 3. That gives us the ability to do some basic quote-unquote editing to a file that we've created directly from the command line. However, we don't really have the facilities at the command line without some bash trickery to edit the contents or change the contents of our file without doing some sed or awk or file substitution and manipulating our file, which in all actuality we're going to cover in a subsequent video. So there's 2 tools that you will use in your Linux command line toolbook to edit files more than 90% of the time. You'll hear people use other tools as well, like Emacs. But what you'll use is you'll use VI or VIM, and VIM is simply an extension for VI. It stands for VI Improved. And you'll use Nano. These are 2 text-based, console-based editors that allow you to edit any kind of a file, but in our case, we're going to be editing text files. So if we look at the files that we have available in our system here, we have mytest.txt and mytest2.txt. Let's use one of these editors to edit one of the files and one to edit the other. We're not going to go into a whole lot of detail about all of the options that are available in the editors, except for how to do some basic moving around and then to save and exit our editor. There are other courses available on Linux Academy that cover VI and Nano in very great detail if you want to know everything about them. We're just looking for how do we do some basic text editing using these 2 tools. So if we do a VI on mytest.txt, it will open the file and place my cursor on the very first line. Now you can move back and forth between the lines that are available by using your arrow keys. So the arrow keys will take you forward and back, but what they won't do is they won't allow you to make any changes at this point. VI uses something called special mode editing, which means you have to activate certain types of commands. So for example, if I want to begin editing at the beginning of my file, wherever my cursor is, if I press my I button, you'll see that down here you see insert is now indicated. That means that anything that I type here will be inserted wherever my cursor is at. So now I'm going to say my test line, and it will and my ability to edit this text file will behave exactly like you would expect it to. My test line 2, and I can go forward and backward using my typical commands, my typical keyboard, backspace, etc. To get out of the insert mode and return to what's called command mode, you hit the escape, and you'll see that insert has now disappeared. Now anything that I do will be in the command mode for VI rather than the editing mode for VI. Now say for example I wanted to edit and change my line 3 to my line 34. I could certainly do an I and then move my cursor and put a 4 in place. Or what I could do is put my cursor on the letter or number that I want to begin with and press the A, which will append. See how it moved the cursor to the end of that? So it appends what I'm going to type next to the end of the line that I'm on. And in this case, it'll be 34. Returning to command mode, I hit the escape key. And in order for us to exit and save our file, we have to issue 2 commands. So we're going to press the colon key, which will bring us down to the bottom of our file so that we can edit so that we can add the commands that are necessary to do whatever we're going to do. If we wanted to quit without saving, we could just do a Q. If we wanted to write without quitting, we could just do a W. And in this case, we want to write and we want to quit. So we're going to save this file, and using our cat command, we're going to mytest.txt, and you'll see all the changes that we made in that file have been captured. VI is sometimes thought of as a little bit more difficult to learn because you need to learn some of the basic command mode items that we just talked about: insert, append, delete, You can delete whole lines. There are keyboard shortcuts to do absolutely everything in VI or Vim for editing your text file. So now let's go ahead and take a look at one other text editor at the command line that you'll commonly run into, and that's Nano. So if we run Nano on mytest2.txt, then that will open up the file, and you'll see it looks a little bit differently. So whereas in VI you've got a very sparse user interface environment that didn't really tell you a whole lot about what to do and how to do it, at least from within Nano you've got some clue what you're looking at. So you'll see it's GNU Nano 231. The file we're editing is called mytest2.txt, and then we've got some stuff down here that tells us some things that we can do. So where we have these special characters, those can be accessed with the control key and then the letter that's next to us. So for example, I'm going to write out, this is a test, and you'll notice I didn't have to go into any special mode in order to write or make an edit to this particular file. In fact, if I go back here using my arrow keys, I can go and remove the characters without having to do anything special. So we're just going to say, this is a test. This is a test. And this is a test. Now we can add and manipulate anything without any special characters that we need to from within this file. And in fact, things like the tabbing character, the backspace character, those all behave exactly like you would think. Now there is a lot of command line shortcuts that you can use from within Nano as well. And again, Nano can be covered in a series of videos all by itself. And surprise, at linuxacademy.com, you'll find a video that talks about both Nano and VI in great detail. And I recommend that you take a look at those if you're unfamiliar with those tools. In this case, we want to do a couple of things. We want to write out or write our file changes. So we're going to do a control in O. In this case, it will also give us an opportunity to rename our file. In this case, we want to leave it as mytest2.txt. Now that that has been done, all we want to do is exit, which we can accomplish with a Control X. And now if we look at cat, mytest2.txt, if I don't forget to type the period, then I can see that all the changes that I made through Nano give us exactly what we would expect. So for creating and editing text files on the command line, besides using the tools like VI and Nano, you saw that we were able to use touch to create an empty file. We were able to use echo to echo the contents out and create a file. We were also able to append contents using the echo command to a file that we created. And again, using our other command line tools, we were able to edit and save the changes that we made in those files. So for doing basic editing of our text files on the command line, that's all there is to it. My name is Terry for Linux Academy.